The day Richard threw the crumpled divorce papers at my feet is a day I'll never forget, like a scar that won't fade. I stood there, shocked and unable to move, as he said those chilling words. "I've sold the house because I'm moving in with her. It's over, Anna." I was 34 then, taking care of our son Jason, who was only 13. Our life as I knew it fell apart in that moment. I didn't see it coming and I wasn't ready for what would happen next. Richard and I met when I was just 19. He was 26, working at a big company. I was a receptionist at a smaller part of the company. He noticed me and I liked the attention. I was young and he seemed perfect. Our relationship moved quickly. I got pregnant unexpectedly and soon we were married in a simple ceremony. Life seemed uncomplicated back then. I focused on our home and raising Jason. Richard was busy with work, and gradually he was around less. I didn't think much about it. I was busy with our son and our home. The day he left, everything fell apart. I had to face the truth about our supposedly happy life. Richard's cheating, his growing distance. The signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. With nowhere else to go, Jason and I moved back to my family home. My sister Laura and her husband weren't welcoming. They made it clear we were a burden, unwanted in their settled life. I felt lost, a high school graduate with little work experience suddenly needing a job to support us. The job market was tough, each rejection hurt. But I had Jason to care for, a young boy facing grown-up problems. In my desperation, I found a job at a call center. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a glimmer of hope in my dark days. The work was hard, long hours, upset customers, constant business. But it gave me purpose again, something I'd lost in all the turmoil. As I started working in the corporate world, I realized how sheltered I'd been. My lack of knowledge, especially about legal things like divorce and alimony, made me vulnerable to Richard's decisions. This realization sparked something inside me. I promised myself I'd never feel so powerless again. I threw myself into learning about the world outside home and family. Watching Jason grow up, I saw how our situation affected him. He became quieter, more serious than other kids his age, with eyes that seemed older than he was. But he was tough, adapting to our new life with a strength I admired. Our journey was just starting, a path full of challenges and discoveries. But through those challenges, I discovered a resilience I didn't know I had. And from those discoveries, I found a determination to stand up for ourselves and claim what we deserved. Life at my sister Laura's house reminded me every day of how much we had fallen. Her husband Mark didn't hide his dislike, often saying, "Anna, you need to find your own place soon. We can't keep supporting you forever." The pressure was constant. I looked through job listings every day, and every rejection made me feel worse. But Jason's quiet strength kept me going. Despite everything, he stayed focused on his studies, never giving up. One day I found a job opening at a customer service center. It wasn't fancy, but it was a chance. The interview was nerve-wracking. Sitting there in my old suit with a sparse resume, I felt out of place. "Why are you interested in this job?" the interviewer asked. I wanted to say I have no other option, but instead, I forced a smile and replied, "I'm seeking a chance to learn and develop." To my surprise, they offered me the job. It was a contract role, but it was a beginning. When I told Laura and Mark, I felt a mix of relief and a pang of inadequacy when Mark commented, "Finally, you can start pulling your weight." The job was tough, the fast pace, the constant calls. It was overwhelming, but I pushed through, motivated by Jason's needs and my determination to prove myself. As I settled into the routine, I couldn't stop thinking about my marriage with Richard. How did I miss the signs? The late nights, the mysterious disappearances, the hushed phone conversations. I ignored them, believing in a facade of happiness. But the truth was, Richard had a double life, and I was just a convenient cover. Realizing the truth was hard to accept. It sparked anger toward Richard for his betrayal and toward myself for being so trusting. But a conversation with a coworker changed everything. She, a single mother like me but more knowledgeable, said something that hit home. "Anna, did you receive any alimony or child support? You know you're entitled to it, right?" I was shocked. It hadn't even occurred to me. Richard had left us with nothing, and I had simply accepted it. That moment made me see how little I knew and how unprepared I was. Determined to set things right, I started educating myself. I read books, searched online, anything I could find about divorce and family law. The more I learned, the clearer it became how Richard had manipulated the situation. One day I got a call from Jason's school. He'd been in a fight. My heart sank as I hurried there, fearing the worst. But what I found wasn't a troubled kid, it was a young man pushed too far. "He called you a gold digger," Jason said, eyes blazing with anger. "He said you were after Dad's money. I couldn't let him say that about you." I was stunned. Our pain and shame had reached my son, poisoning his world. It was a wake-up call. I couldn't let Richard's betrayal define us anymore. That night, watching Jason sleep, I made a promise. I would fight back. I would reclaim what Richard took from us, not just for me, but for Jason too. It was time for Richard to face the consequences. The small apartment we moved into was a world away from our old home with Richard, but it was ours. The walls were empty, furniture basic, but it marked a fresh beginning. Jason adjusted quickly, surprising me with his resilience. He threw himself into school with a passion that impressed and worried me. "I want to do well, Mom, for us," Jason would say, his determination shining through his words. I'd been at the call center for a year now. The job was still tough, but I'd grown more confident, handling challenges better. It was a small sense of achievement, but it reminded me I wasn't just Richard's ex-wife. One evening at dinner, Jason looked up and asked, "Mom, do you ever think about Dad?" His question caught me off guard. We rarely talked about Richard. "Sometimes," I said, "but not the way you might think. I think about what he did to us, how he left us with nothing." Jason's eyes hardened. "I hate him for that. He thinks he can walk away without any consequences." His words struck a chord in me. His anger and sense of injustice resonated deeply with my own feelings. "You're right," I replied firmly. "He shouldn't get away with it." In the following weeks, I delved into research about divorce and family law. I learned about alimony, child support, and the legal options available. The more I understood, the more empowered I felt. Then, a breakthrough happened. I discovered that in cases of infidelity, the betrayed spouse could seek alimony even years after the divorce under certain circumstances. This revelation was eye-opening. Richard's cheating had left traces. The late-night calls, secretive behavior, it all pointed to his betrayal. Buoyed by this revelation, I sought out a lawyer. She was understanding, her eyes showing empathy beyond professional duty. "You have a case," she confirmed, "but it won't be easy. Are you prepared for this?" I nodded, my determination solid. "I'm ready, for myself and for Jason." The lawyer outlined our strategy. We would pursue alimony, highlighting Richard's infidelity and his failure to support us financially after the divorce. It would be a challenging process, but I was prepared. I had to be. Jason stood by me, his quiet strength a reassuring presence. "We'll get through this, Mom," he assured me. "We're in this together." On the day we filed the lawsuit, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: fear, anxiety, but most of all, a sense of justice. Richard had hurt us, and it was time for him to face the consequences. As the legal battle unfolded, I braced myself for the pushback. Richard wasn't going to accept this quietly, but I wasn't the naive woman he left behind. I had grown stronger, more knowledgeable, and I was prepared to fight. The legal battle against Richard opened a Pandora's box. The lawyer's investigation uncovered more than just infidelity. It exposed a web of lies and deceit that Richard had spun over the years. One afternoon in the lawyer's office, she handed us a file. "This is more than I expected," she said gravely. Richard wasn't just cheating, he was leading a double life. The documents painted a damning picture: bank statements, credit card bills, and photos revealing Richard's secret life. He lived lavishly while neglecting his family. "Take a look at this," the lawyer pointed to a photo. It showed Richard, smiling and carefree with another woman, his arm around her. My heart sank at the sight, but I faced it head-on. This was the harsh truth. Jason's expression hardened as he examined the evidence. "How could he do this to us? To you?" His voice betrayed a mix of anger and disbelief. "We'll hold him accountable," I asserted firmly. "He won't escape this." The legal battle took its toll. Richard's lawyers were aggressive, trying to undermine me, portraying me as a bitter ex-wife. But I stood my ground, supported by Jason and our lawyer, bolstered by the evidence we had gathered. Then came the day of the deposition. Richard sat opposite us, looking confident. However, that confidence faded as our lawyer began presenting the evidence. "Mr. Richard, can you explain these expenses?" she asked, her tone sharp, sliding the bank statements across the table. Richard glanced at the documents, and I sensed a flicker of panic. "These are personal expenses. They're unrelated to my marriage." "And these photos," the lawyer continued, her gaze steady, "they tell a different story." Richard's facade began to crack. He stumbled for words, his composure slipping. "It was just a fling, nothing serious." Jason cut in, his voice cold. "You destroyed our family for a fling." The tension in the room was palpable. Richard's lawyer tried to intervene, but it was too late. The evidence was damning, Richard's excuses weak and unconvincing. Leaving the deposition, I felt a mix of satisfaction and vindication. Richard had been exposed as a cheater. But the legal battle wasn't over. Richard would surely fight back. Yet I was prepared. For the first time, I felt empowered. No longer a victim of Richard's betrayal, I was fighting back, for Jason and for the future we deserved. As the lawsuit dragged on, each hearing more contentious than the last, an unexpected twist emerged. One evening, Jason came home with an unusual expression. "Mom, you won't believe what happened today," he said, a mix of disbelief and amusement in his voice. "What happened?" I asked eagerly. "I had a job interview today at a pharmaceutical company. Guess who the HR manager is?" I felt a shiver down my spine. "Not Richard?" Jason nodded grimly. "Yes, Richard. He didn't recognize me at first. I guess he's forgotten his own son's face." The irony was bitter. Richard, who had abandoned his family for his career, was now unwittingly interviewing his own son. "What did you do?" I asked, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. A cold determination flashed in Jason's eyes. I played along at first, but then he paused, a smirk appearing on his face. In the end, I couldn't resist. I asked him if the company condones affairs. The look on his face was unforgettable when he realized who I was. I felt torn between shock and a strange satisfaction. Richard, confronted by the son he had abandoned, in a place where he typically felt powerful. "What did he say?" I asked eagerly. "He denied it, of course," Jason replied, so I pressed on. I asked him how he could interview me after tearing our family apart for his own selfish reasons. Jason's voice held bitterness, but also a hint of triumph. He was speechless. I left him there, grappling with his guilt. The revelation hit me hard. Richard was finally facing the consequences of his actions in a way he never expected. It was a twist of fate that felt almost poetic. "But why did you go to that interview?" I asked, still trying to process it all. Jason's answer was simple yet profound. "I needed to confront him face to face, to show him that despite everything, he didn't break us. We're still standing, and we're fighting back." The aftermath of Jason's encounter with Richard at the job interview stirred waves in our ongoing legal battle. Richard, now confronted by his own son, grew more desperate in his defense. Our lawyer, Miss Carter, called us for a strategy meeting. "Richard's lawyers are pushing for a settlement," she informed us in her office, "but considering the evidence and Jason's testimony, I believe we can aim higher. What do you want to do?" I turned to Jason, wanting his input. His expression was resolute, his determination unwavering. "We press forward," he declared firmly. "He needs to face consequences, not just financially, but morally as well." Miss Carter nodded firmly. "Okay, let's get ready for the next meeting. It's going to be tough, but we have the truth on our side." The meeting turned out to be really hard. Richard's lawyer tried to make him seem sorry for his actions, but Miss Carter kept going, showing proof of how Richard had lied and not taken care of his family. Richard went up to speak, seeming both stubborn and fake sorry. "I'm sorry for hurting my family," he said, but his voice didn't sound like he meant it. "But I think the deal they're offering is fair." His words didn't feel true, and I got really mad. How could he act like he was the one who was hurt after everything he'd done? That's when Jason spoke out. "Fair and just?" he challenged, his voice strong yet filled with emotion. "Was it fair to leave your family behind, to lie and cheat, while we struggled to make ends meet?" The courtroom went quiet, Jason's words hanging heavily in the air. Richard glanced at his son, perhaps feeling a flicker of guilt, but it was too late for regrets. After thinking it over, the judge decided in our favor. The settlement was much more than what Richard had offered, a clear recognition of the harm he had caused. Leaving the courthouse, I felt a sense of justice. It wasn't just about the money, it was about holding Richard responsible for his actions. "We did it, Mom," Jason said, a small smile forming. "We finally made him face the consequences." The victory in court against Richard wasn't just about winning, it was about restoring our dignity and beginning to heal. But the story didn't stop there. The fallout from Richard's actions began to affect his life, both at work and personally. One evening, a few weeks after the trial, I got a call from a former colleague who worked with Richard at the pharmaceutical company. "Anna, have you heard about Richard?" she asked, sounding surprised and intrigued. "No, what happened?" I replied, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. "He's been demoted," she disclosed. "After your lawsuit, the company did their own investigation. Turns out he was using company resources for personal matters. They've reassigned him to a remote factory, basically ending his career." I sat in silence, shocked. Richard, once a rising star at his company, was now facing the consequences of his actions in a fitting manner. His career, something he valued above us, was crumbling. Jason listened quietly as I shared the news. "Good," he said simply, though his eyes showed a deeper satisfaction. "He's getting what he deserves." But the consequences continued. Richard's social circle, once close-knit, began to distance themselves. His reputation, damaged by the lawsuit and company investigation, became a liability. I heard from different sources about Richard's downfall, how he had to sell his apartment to cover the settlement and legal costs, and how his second wife, the woman he left us for, struggled with their reduced lifestyle. As I thought about these events, it became clear that Richard had brought this upon himself. His selfish and deceitful choices had led to his downfall. Reflecting on it all, I saw it wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about the universe correcting a wrong. Jason and I discussed this one evening, our conversation more contemplative than vengeful. "Do you pity him?" Jason asked, his tone even. I hesitated, pondering his question. "No," I replied finally, "but I do feel a sense of closure. It's like a chapter has finally ended, allowing us to start fresh." Jason nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it's time to move forward, focus on our own lives." With the legal battle settled and Richard facing the consequences of his actions, Anna and Jason looked ahead to the future, feeling the weight of the past gradually lift from their shoulders. They had endured hardships and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the next phase of their lives. As the legal issues faded into the background and Richard dealt with the fallout, a new sense of freedom settled over us. It was like we had been freed from a dark cloud that had hung over us for years. Our modest apartment, once a symbol of our struggles, began to feel more like a home. We redecorated, making it a reflection of our fresh start. The walls, once bare, now held artwork, and shelves were filled with books and cherished memories. Jason, now more relaxed and focused, was excelling in his studies. His earlier determination, fueled by anger and a quest for justice, had evolved into a genuine love for learning. "I'm thinking of applying for a research internship this summer," he shared one evening, his eyes shining with excitement. "That's fantastic, Jason," I replied, feeling proud. "You've put in so much effort for this." Our conversations had shifted from dwelling on the past to discussing the future, what we had endured and what we hoped to achieve. We talked about travel, the places we dreamed of visiting, and the experiences we wanted to have. One day, while we sat enjoying coffee in our newly decorated living room, I brought up a topic that had been on my mind. "Jason, have you considered dating? You know, meeting someone special." He chuckled, slightly embarrassed. "I've been so focused on school and everything else, but yeah, I think I'm ready to start dating," Jason said. I smiled, feeling glad to see him thinking about normal, happy parts of life after all we'd been through. It felt like a victory in itself. Meanwhile, I had found a new sense of purpose beyond my job at the call center. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping other women who had faced similar challenges. Sharing my story and offering support brought a deep sense of fulfillment I hadn't experienced before. One evening, as Jason and I sat on our balcony under the stars, a peaceful feeling surrounded us. "Mom, do you ever think about Dad anymore?" Jason asked softly. I paused, thinking about his question. "Sometimes," I admitted, but not with anger or resentment. "I think about how much we've grown since then, how he was a part of our journey but not the whole story." Jason nodded in understanding. "Yeah," he agreed, "I feel the same. He's just a chapter in our past." We sat quietly for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. The journey we'd been through wasn't one we'd chosen, but it had shaped us in ways we never expected.